I'm currently reading through the Psalms and I've gotten to Psalm 18. And Psalm 18 is really a beautiful psalm because it speaks about David and how he has such a love for God and such a reliance on God. And then it also gets into where David is now encompassed by his enemies and surrounded by his enemies, and how God ultimately protects David through all of that. So let's get into it. In the beginning of Psalm 18, verse 1, David says, "I love you, O Lord, my strength." And that is honestly such a beautiful link to the first commandment of, "I shall have no other gods except God." And this David really emphasizes here. In the very first verse is, "I love you, Lord, my strength." And then it goes on to say that God is David's rock, his fortress. And a fortress is, well, back in the day, well, kings would live in a fortress. And a fortress had walls around it, cities, and like a city inside of it, which kind of kept the king safe from outside threats. So God was David's protection, but God was also David's number one. The first thing David did was rely on God. He had nothing above God. All right, and then we continue and we fast forward to verse 6. It says, "In my distress I called upon the Lord. To my God I cried for help. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears." And what's really beautiful about verse 6 is David was in distress, because we read in the previous verses that David was encompassed by his enemies. He was in an impossible situation where he was fully surrounded by those that wished him dead, that wished the worst for David. I mean, he was trapped, and he cried out to God. And what's amazing about the second part of verse 6 is God heard him. God's ears were listening. And then we read the next couple of verses, and it's how God acts on this, how God gets angry at those that want to wrong his child, his servant. And then God moves. He goes to great lengths to save David. And then fast forward even more verses, we see how God allows David to triumph over his enemies, over those that wish him harm. And this whole psalm, it's really just a beautiful reminder that we need to trust and rely on God. Firstly, we need to make God our number one. We shall have no other gods except God himself. And gods in our lives can be anything. It can be our cell phones, it can be technology. What are we placing above God? A relationship with Jesus. And firstly, once we've made Jesus our number one and we fully rely on him, God is going to hear our calls, because God is our Father and we are God's children. So God will hear our call and he will come to help us. He will take us out of those impossible situations and he will save us. But you have to rely and trust in him. That is what it means to have faith. I want you all to have a super blessed day and keep living for God.